This is Strezabyte, a channel focused on awesome technology, and this is my review of the LG V30. Let's take a look. So this is the V30, the new flagship from LG. And right off the top, you'll notice that it adopts a similar design language to the other flagships that we've seen this year, such as the Galaxy S8 Plus. It's got a beautiful and really nice to hold industrial design. All of the logos and everything is hidden behind the glass, so it's super smooth to the touch, with the exception of the camera bump, the home button, and the earpiece slit. Now along the sides, there are two seams that go all the way around the edge of the device, where the front glass meets the middle meets the back. I didn't like this at first. I thought it felt a little weird in my hand, but once I kind of got used to it, it really started to grow on me, and it really seemed to help with gripability as well, which is really important when you're holding a really big phone like this. Now the glass they're using here is really tough. I believe it's Gorilla Glass 5. This phone right here actually took a fall about 4 feet straight onto concrete, and it is totally fine. I couldn't find even a single scratch on it. That same fall took a huge chunk out of my Nexus 6P screen a couple of years ago. So this is a marked improvement over where we've been before. So along the left side of the phone, we have our volume buttons. Along the bottom, we have our USB Type-C port, along with a bottom firing speaker and a microphone port. Along the right side, we have our SIM tray, along with our expandable storage slot. And along the top, we have another microphone port, along with the fabled headphone jack from years in the past. That's right, in 2017, somebody is still shipping a headphone jack, thankfully, on their phones. Then along the back, we've got our camera, which is a dual camera setup along with their flash, our home button and fingerprint reader, our AT&T logo, which might be a little different depending on which model you get, and of course the LG logo along the bottom. The glass on the back does pick up quite a few fingerprints, and I guess that's just par for the course with any glass-backed phone, especially one that comes in a black color scheme these days. Microfiber cloth will take care of that real fast though, so that's not a big deal, but that's kind of, again, par for the course. And that brings us to the front, and this killer display that I just absolutely love looking at. Now before we go too far into talking about the display, I do want to confront the elephant in the room, which is a lot of media reports have been coming out about the screen and about quality control issues that come with it. The V30 ships with a POLED display made by LG, the same one used in the Pixel 2 XL, which is also having its own share of display quality control issues. Now with that being said, I did not see any issues on this device that you see right here that came from AT&T, was ordered from them on launch day. Now some people on the LG V30 subreddit seem to think that this is an issue that's been fixed in later models, that have been manufactured after the early review wave has kind of gone out. So it's possible this has been fixed. Others suggest that maybe it's not quite fixed yet. Now LG does include a 2-year warranty in their phones for the V30. And if you have display issues, it seems that they kind of present themselves really quickly. So it seems like if you do get a device that has a bugged screen, you'll be able to replace it through your carrier or through LG. But at this point, there's no real guarantee that the device you're going to get is going to have a great screen. So you may just want to wait until LG issues a statement or something like that to basically determine for sure that the problem has been addressed. But like I said, I don't have any problems with my screen. My screen looks phenomenal. I love the way that colors pop on it. That HDR display just looks fantastic. Colors on it are very bright and very well saturated, but not garishly so like you'll see on some Samsung displays. And really important to me, because I walk outside a lot, it is super bright, super visible, even in the brightest sunlight, and we've had a lot of really bright days here in the last couple weeks, so really been testing this outdoors. It looks great. That has not been a problem at all. So the only issue that I've noticed so far is a bit of blue shift when you tilt the phone about 20 degrees in any direction. You can see the colors kind of shift a little bit more towards the blue side of the spectrum, and it really doesn't matter which way you're looking at it. You'll see that. This really only manifested itself for me when it was working on a desk or something like that, where it wasn't in my hand. When it's in your hand, you're really kind of just looking at it straight on. It's not that big a deal. So yeah, long story short, this display to me looks great. I love the way that it looks. It's super bright, super colorful. If you're worried about these quality control issues, you may want to take a pass on this for right now, at least until LG can issue a statement and figure out what's going on. But if you do get a phone and it does afflicted by these issues, you should be able to replace it. Another area that was improved with the V30 this year is in the area of haptics, or force feedback when you're touching elements on the screen. The haptic feedback that you're going to get from the V30 has been dramatically improved over what they had in the V20. There are all sorts of touches of haptic feedback throughout the system and throughout the apps that LG provides with the phone. It feels phenomenal to use, although it did feel a little unsettling at first, the first time I touched it. But after a few days, it definitely felt normal, and it didn't have any problem with it. I stopped noticing it altogether, but it just helped with the user experience all the way through. And it really helps with typing accuracy too. On the back of the phone is our fingerprint sensor that has come to become the standard place for Android phones over the last couple of years. And just like in the last couple of years, it's just been nice gradual improvement. It's gotten better and better every year as we've gone along. The fingerprint sensor on the V30 is lightning fast and super accurate. I think in the couple weeks that I've had it maybe miss once or twice with the fingerprint sensor. It becomes second nature, and it's in a perfect place. You hit it with your finger every single time. With the fingerprint sensor on the V20, I had to retrain it a couple times. It wasn't super accurate, and it was just not the best experience to use. On the V30, they really nailed it, and it's perfect now. Now, the V30 also has a face scanning feature that uses the front-facing camera. Now, we'll talk about the selfie camera in a little bit. Now, there's no iris scanner like Samsung puts in their phones, and there's no crazy 3D mapping face scanning stuff that Apple's putting into the iPhone X. So this is just relying on the selfie camera that comes at the front. It's just relying on what comes out of the selfie camera, and we'll talk more about the selfie camera in a little bit. Now, I have to admit, I really want to like face scanning, but on this phone, it just isn't quite there yet. I mean, it does the job, but not very fast, and not very reliably. I trained the V30's face scanner in all kinds of lighting conditions, dark, light, very bright outdoors, everything you can imagine. And every time I did, it seemed like it was only going to work about half the time. Now, that may be because I was wearing glasses, but either way, it still should be working if they're going to tout it as a feature. And if you're going to turn it on, it's really important that it's got to be reliable. Most importantly, though, I had very little luck getting it to work very well in low light situations, no matter how I scanned the data in initially. Now, face scanning comes in two modes, one of which is called advanced, which is a little bit more thorough of a scan, and one which is not, it's just an off switch of advanced mode, I don't know what they call it, but it seemed to be a lot faster. The downside to that simpler mode is that it makes it a lot easier for the image sensor to be fooled by just a photo of your face. So if you're going to have face scanning on the V30, you should really have it on the advanced mode, which presents a little bit of a paradox because the advanced mode is so much slower. And you can have it on alongside the fingerprint sensor, so that's good at least. I wouldn't recommend using it as your daily way of unlocking the phone, though. So yeah, we've got a headphone jack on the top of the phone here. One of the only phones that is still shipping, the only flagship phones that's still shipping with a headphone jack on it. That's really good to see. I'm really happy to see that there are still companies that are willing to put this on their phones. And LG went above and beyond here, like they did last year, and they put in their quad DAC with it. Now, the quad DAC only works through the headphone jack, not through the bottom firing speaker, so you will need to plug in headphones for it, and if they're good headphones, that's even better. But they can pretty much just be any pair of headphones that you have. It's hard to quantify what that DAC actually does to the audio experience. In my experience, audio tended to be a little flat with it off, and it just sounded much better with it on, so I would just leave it on all the time. But it's hard to say if that's doing the same thing as like an equalizer preset, or just having a better boosted bass or something like that in a different phone. Now, I did try with a number of different hi-fi audio sources, both on my phone and on my computer. I couldn't really tell the difference, but then I'm not really an audiophile. If you are, you'll probably want to try one of these in a store in person with a pair of nice headphones to really gauge whether it's working or not. But if you're buying one for the headphone jack, this is probably the best phone that you can get that actually implements the headphone jack on the market today. And while we're talking about audio, let's talk about the speaker that comes in on the bottom. It's a little disappointing to see that the phone only has one speaker. I would have loved to have had stereo, or even better, have stereo along the bottom and the top. Front-facing, that would have been the ideal, but I guess we're squeezing these bezels as tiny as we can get now. Now, that being said, the volume that comes in on this is actually pretty respectable. It can get pretty loud. You can hear it from the other room. There's not a whole problem with volume there. When it comes to the audio quality itself, voices punch through the sound really well. If you're using this for conference calls or speakerphone or something like that, that's going to sound really good. At least as good as a tiny little speaker can anyway. Beyond voice, we actually got pretty respectable lows and mids out of this speaker. Stuff like acoustic guitar and electric guitar and stuff, that sort of sound, that made it through this speaker pretty well. The highs had to be pretty strong in the overall sound profile to kind of come out at all through this, or they just had to be kind of played by themselves. So like a cymbal playing by itself would be pretty easy to hear, but if you're playing that throughout a song, that's not really what you're going to be hearing. You're going to be hearing more of the lows and the mids. And the bass, don't even think about it. The bass is pretty much completely gone. There is very little to no bass in this at all, but that's not what you're getting a tiny speaker for. If you want something like that, get a portable speaker with Bluetooth or something like that. Ultimately, though, this isn't really a music speaker. I mean, you're not going to hate playing music on it totally. This is a speaker that's more for, hearing UI sounds, hearing voices through speakerphone, that sort of thing. And for those reasons, it's pretty good. But it's pretty respectable even still for what it is in terms of a music speaker. But if you want to listen to music on it, you're probably better off, again, just getting a portable Bluetooth speaker. That said, like any bottom-firing speaker, it's way too easy to cover with your finger and be totally unable to hear anything and wonder, why is my speaker broken? Oh, it's because I've got the thing covered. So now let's take a shift onto the software side of things. LG ships their own skin on top of Android that is very white, very iPhone-inspired, so if you're switching from an iPhone, this is going to start to look and feel a little familiar to you. If you're a stock Android purist, this is probably going to put you off a little bit. There's really not much material design that goes on inside of LG's skin, but it does look pretty nice, and it's pretty simple, and it doesn't seem to add that much overhead to the system. The phone ships with Android Nougat, and it's supposed to receive an Oreo update, I think they said by the end of this year. It also comes with LG's very own take on the launcher. And again, this comes out of the box as a very iPhone-inspired launcher, where it doesn't have an app drawer, and all of the apps that you download sort of just append themselves onto the last page. Now, it does also come with a version that has an app launcher. This is what you see right here on the phone that I have now. It also comes with a mode called Easy Home, which is a simpler version that's meant a lot more for people who are not particularly technically savvy, who are not looking for Android's best features, but just want a really nice, consistent, and easy-to-use launcher experience. You can, of course, install your own launcher like you can on any other Android phone. I tend to use Action Launcher, but you can use Nova or whatever else that you like. Now, the launcher does include a couple features that are very similar to what comes on an iPhone. You can swipe down from anywhere on the launcher to pull up the Search and Apps UI, which is very similar to Spotlight on an iPhone. It also has its own LG-style take on Google Now called the Smart Bulletin. This I found to be pretty limited in terms of what it can do, but in theory other apps can build support into it. I believe this has been around for a couple years. I think it was on the V20. I never used it, and if apps can build on top of it, there aren't really that many. The only apps that I saw were... What are they? The only apps that are supported there are Glimpse and Vingle. And you can download these through one of the pre-installed bloatware apps called the LG Smart World. You can also download themes and some other customizations using this app. If you're anything like me, you probably won't be in here very much, but it is there for people who do want to customize things a little bit more than just what Android offers you. Now, one of the key features on the V20 was the second screen that sat at the top of the screen. This was sort of the original notch, if you will, because it was just an extension of the screen with a cutout for the camera. Now, since we have this much closer to edge design in the V30, LG has replaced this with what they call the floating bar, which is this little icon that you see right there along the side of the screen. If you tap that, it'll slide out and show you a bunch of shortcuts and customizations that you can do. One of the screens includes sort of a mini shortcut launcher. This is great for sort of your favorite apps or your favorite shortcuts into certain apps. The second page has a bunch of options for taking screenshots, including one for taking GIF screenshots. There's also a way of getting access to music controls if you're playing music. And that's really it. There were a couple more that used to be on the V20 that aren't here, so it's a little disappointing to see them go. But that's what it is now. You can take this and drag it anywhere on the screen. It will stick to either one of the vertical edges along the side. And it will be there when you open apps, and it will just kind of stay pinned along the side, and then you just tap it to kind of access it. Now, I thought this would be more useful for me than it actually turned out to be. It's kind of just in the way some of the time. Oftentimes, because I'm kind of touching along the sides of the screen anyway with my thumb, I kind of trigger it by accident, which is kind of annoying. Which is a shame, because it's kind of a cool feature, but it's not something that's super necessary. I'm torn on whether or not I should keep it on or not. But, I can't be too upset that it's there. I can turn it off in the settings if I don't like it. But, it's still providing some value. So we'll see if I keep it on or not. But right now, it's not living up to what I thought it was going to be. Now, one feature that has been pretty useful has been called Smart Cleaning. This is on the V20, I believe, as well. It's kind of a necessary evil because you don't want to have to manage apps and manage what's running on the phone for a long time. You kind of want the phone to just work, but as we all know, sometimes the system doesn't get it right, and you do want to be able to step in and say, hey, just kill everything off and make my phone run faster. That's what this is for. And with one button press that you just tap this, It'll go through, it'll shut down a bunch of programs that are open, save you a bunch of memory, and save you a bunch of processor time. You can also activate battery saver mode this way. It's a very efficient way of just hitting one button, cleaning up your phone, getting back to having a nice run fast. And it works well enough, and I really do like it, but I think it could be a little bit more accessible on here. There's no way of getting it into the floating bar. There's no way of putting it into the notification shade. Those kind of things are really where it would be very helpful to have. It's right now just kind of buried inside of a settings app. I would really love to see that floated up more towards the top. Another feature LG puts on their phones is called Quick Memo Plus, and it's a pretty nice little note-taking and annotation app. It does have some nice integrations with the system, like being able to annotate screenshots. But with that being said, this isn't really a note-taking device. I mean, if you want something that's going to be the best note-taking experience ever, you're probably buying the Galaxy Note 8 anyway. But it's certainly nice to have. Certainly a viable alternative to something like Google Keep or Evernote. Another feature they make a big deal about on this phone is screenshot taking. Now you can obviously take a screenshot with the normal volume down and home button trick. You can capture the whole screen, part of the screen, you can capture a scrollable list inside of an app, and you can annotate all of those with pen tool and all kinds of stuff. One of the features I was really looking forward to, but ultimately pretty disappointed by, was the ability to take GIF screenshots. I tested out a lot of software. It would be really great if I could contact developers by tapping through a sequence and showing them a bug or a thing I didn't expect to work right. While that sounds exactly like what GIF screenshots are useful for, you can't interact with the screen at all while you're taking the GIF screenshot. That means that the only thing that you can really take a GIF screenshot of is either a game or an existing video, and that seems to be what the benefit of the GIF screenshot is. So if you want to capture a 5-second GIF off of something off of YouTube, for example, it works great. But if you're trying to actually interact with an app, it doesn't work because you can't interact with the app at all. Also, it'd be really nice if you could just record it as a video file in the first place. Ultimately, it's a really cool idea, but a pretty broken implementation with a lot of untapped potential. I would love to see them fix this in an update. But if you're buying it for that feature, don't buy it. Now, LG does put in a few stock apps of their own for things like email and calendar, and they work well enough, but again, they're very iPhone-inspired in terms of their visual design. There's no material design to be found here. It's just a lot of white. And you know, they work well enough. I'm not going to complain about them. They're a little simpler on the design side of things. You can replace them with variants from the Play Store, of course, so there's not really much to be lost there, but if you're expecting some brand new super powerful email client, for example, it's not quite there, but it is going to get the job done. Alright, now let's talk about one of the best features on this phone, and that is the back camera. If there was a killer feature on the V30, the back camera is it. Right off the top, the camera comes jam-packed with modes. There's all kinds of modes for doing stuff. Most of these you can find, apps on the Play Store for doing, but they kind of come right out of the box with a lot of them, and a lot of them offer some really cool customizations too. Now there is, of course, the auto mode, which is probably what you're going to be shooting in most of the time. It does default to this every time you open it, so that's great because it just means point and shoot is pretty easy. There is an HDR mode that it comes with that will be left on if you keep it on, and it does add some performance slowdown to the actual act of taking a picture, so you may want to have it turned off, but it does produce some pretty good results. The performance impact that it takes, though, is a lot less than on the V20, at least in my experience. There are also a bunch of filters that you can use. None of them are particularly great. Now, the main camera got a nice upgrade this year, but the real upgrade comes to the wide-angle camera that comes on the back. Gone are the problems of having low-quality pictures and a lot of fisheye distortion around the edges. The wide-angle lens takes great photos, probably a little bit decreased compared to the standard camera, but it still looks fantastic, and that fisheye distortion is almost gone. And it's an invaluable part of the shooting experience on the V30 because you can really get some super wide shots from very close up. I think it's a lot more useful than a telephoto lens like on the iPhone, but that's just me personally. If you're taking a lot of pictures of people, you'll probably want that telephoto lens instead. Either way, it's a very good option and one that I love using now. The video camera in here is pretty solid too. Image stabilization works really well. One of the features that was added this year is the ability to save in CineLog format, which is a file format that you can take into professional video editing apps like Adobe Premiere. And it really helps you to be able to color correct things a lot better, a lot more detail in the color data that is saved. You don't want to shoot with that on all the time though, because it does make the colors look a little weird if you're not editing them. But if you are, it just looks fantastic when you're done. So the rear camera on here is great. I can't say almost a single bad thing about it, which leads us to the front camera. And I gotta say, the selfie camera is super disappointing. It doesn't take very good photos. Photos that it does take are almost always washed out, devoid of detail, full of lots of artifacts, and they tend to make faces look green unless you're in perfect lighting. You can correct for some of this stuff with filters and things like that, but you really shouldn't have to. And on a phone that's so focused on a great rear photography experience, there's really no reason that the front-facing camera has to be such a potato. Photos it takes are just noisy and ugly. They're not what this phone is great at. So if you're taking a lot of selfies, or if you're sitting on a lot of video calls, this phone is just not going to make you look very good. It's just not. I really don't know why LG put such a bad camera on the front of this thing. It's something they really should address in the next version of this phone. So let's talk about the battery. The V30 has a 3300 milliamp hour battery in it, which isn't too spectacular, but it does get some good mileage out of it for what it's got. On a heavy day where I was using it a lot, playing a lot of games, using a lot of social apps, watching a lot of videos on YouTube, that sort of thing, I would get about 4 hours to 4 hour 20 minutes on it. On a lighter day where I was just checking email, maybe checking some websites, I got about 5 hours of screen on time with about 25% battery left by the end of the day. So this thing can hold its own. Seems to be on par with the V20, maybe a little bit better. A little bit bigger of a battery would have been nice, but it does its job and it's pretty good. But one of the nice features about the V30 is that it does have wireless charging built into it now. So I've started replacing all of the surfaces at the desks that I work at with wireless charging pads, and so I can trickle charge it up during the course of the day, and I don't actually have to worry about it ever hitting those low battery percentages on a normal day. Now, obviously, on a heavy day, if I'm traveling or something like that, this thing is probably not going to hold its own, but it does have Quick Charge 3.0. If I'm at the airport or something like that, I'll be able to charge it quickly, so that's not the end of the world, but losing the replaceable battery on the V20 definitely makes that sting a little bit more. So yeah, that'll just about do it for my review of the LG V30. The hardware looks great. Feels great in the hand. Glass can take a drop without seemingly having any problems with it. This POLED display with HDR, it looks fantastic. The colors are super bright, and it's going to ruin every other display for you, as long as you get a good one. If you don't get a good one, you can take it back and hopefully get it replaced. If you're really worried about it, don't get this phone right now. But if you get a good one, it's going to be great, and you're going to enjoy it. The fingerprint sensor on here is lightning fast. It's definitely the way to go. You can have Face Unlock on, but it's just not that good of an experience. Wait until they get better sensors in it in next year's version before it really kind of takes off. The LG UI is going to be very familiar to anybody who's coming from an iPhone or has used an iPhone in the past. But if you're looking for stock Android, this is not the phone. But the skin that they do put on is not particularly onerous or heavyweight, so it's not going to impact your day-to-day usage. And it's pretty good skin overall. Floating bar is useful, and it definitely has a place, and I'm glad to see it's on the phone because you can turn it off. But, it's not necessarily the thing that it was all cracked up to be. Really, the camera on this phone is where it's at, and if you're taking a lot of photos, or especially if you're taking a lot of video, this phone is really going to do a great job for you. So rather than giving a review score or something like that, I'd like to talk about who I'd recommend this phone to and who I would not recommend this phone to. If you're looking to switch away from an iPhone to try out Android, this is not a bad way to go. The skin that LG provides is very, very inspired by the iPhone. Things look very iPhone-like. There's a lot of white everywhere. You'll feel at home a lot easier with that migration path, so long as you're not looking for pure stock Android. If you're the kind of person that's taking a lot of photos, especially of things like landscapes, this is really going to be a great camera for you because all of the manual modes mean that you're going to be able to fiddle with the settings a whole lot and get every last bit out of this camera. Similarly, if you're taking a lot of video, this has some really killer video features for you, and you're going to be able to get a lot of mileage out of this video camera. And really, anybody who wants a flagship Android phone that doesn't want to pay $1,000 for one, like the market seems to be moving to, this is not a bad way of going. It's not going to be the perfect Android experience. There are going to be a couple compromises, but it's a really good phone. It's going to serve you very well. Now, who should consider skipping this phone? Well, first off the top, we'll start with anybody who wants just the pure Android experience with nothing on top. If that's what you're looking for, you'd probably be better served with a Pixel phone or with something like the OnePlus 5 and its Oxygen OS. The LG skin is pretty lightweight and it's not that big a deal, but if you're looking for that pure experience, this is not going to do it for you. If what you're looking for is the best, the brightest, the most colorful, the most saturated screen that comes on the market, this isn't it. It's a really good screen, but it's not the absolute spec-topping, chart-topping monster that you would want. For that, you'll want to get a Samsung or an iPhone. If you're the kind of person that takes a lot of selfies with your phone, or if you're sitting on video calls all the time, the front-facing camera on here, not great. You're going to want to get a different phone that's going to have a much better camera on the front. And if you're looking to take a lot of notes on your phone, probably just get the Galaxy Note 8. It's got the stylus, it's got better note-taking tools, it's going to be better all around for that job. And of course, if you want a giant notch in the middle of your phone, get the iPhone X, iPhone 10, whatever. So that should just about do it for my review of the LG V30. Thank you so much for watching. Do drop a comment down below and tell me what your favorite feature is that you're looking forward to on the LG V30. If you like what you saw, do make sure to drop a like down below and make sure you subscribe so that you can check out more reviews of cell phones and laptops and other things in the future. We just hit a pretty cool milestone here on this channel. We had our first video, actually our first 2 videos, cross 1,000 views. So thank you all so much for watching all of this stuff. Put a lot of work into it, and it's really awesome to see all of you coming back and checking it all out. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.